Hello, hello. It is that time of the month again, which is honestly crazy to me. It feels like April flew by. It was a very, very busy month for me. But I'm never too busy for manga. That is one truth I have really learned. Manga is so beautiful. I can always fit it in. I always love making time on Sunday mornings to read Weekly Shonen Jump, which had a couple fairly significant events. We had a fairly long running series end at 50 chapters. We'll be talking about that, and one new series start, plus all sorts of other great stuff for us to chat about. We had 4 issues in the month of April. Let's dive right in. I don't have too much else to say preliminarily. We are indeed going to start by talking about the series that ended. This is Astro Royale by Wakui Sensei, who really blew up and became famous for Tokyo Revengers. Someone I know in a manga discussion Discord, whom I talk to about manga a lot, has been reading Tokyo Revengers. He seems to have kind of like mixed feelings about it, but I've heard really good things from other people. It is a series I'd like to get to at some point. But his presence in Weekly Shonen Jump was much ballyhooed. It was seen as like a major victory for Shueisha. This guy with a big hit manga, something that kind of was explosive and unlike anything we'd ever seen before in terms of art style, in terms of tone, in terms of kind of a forward edge that it seemed to kind of encapsulate and trance people with. Had a successful anime as well. It was like, wow, this is probably one of the biggest stars that Jump would be able to snag. And what he produced for Jump, I think, is in no way like nothing we've seen before. It is something we've seen before. It was a shockingly generic battle shonen about a Yakuza family, which isn't, super overtreaded ground in Jump in particular, but is in manga in general. So many Yakuza stories, so many stories of kind of virtuous Yakuza families and the bonds they have and going against those who would dare defy the code of honor of the family and blah, blah, blah. So it's that mashed up with a Boku no Hero Academia style, everyone gets superpowers type event. And then, this event also kind of throws Tokyo into chaos. So now they're battling through all the wards of Tokyo, trying to reunite with the brothers, trying to get them on their side, fighting evil forces. And, like, there's nothing really new about that. There's no real X factor that makes that super interesting to me. And then, with that premise, they didn't really do all that much interesting either. Everybody's power seemed very by the book. If you were just kind of going through a checklist of superpowers, you would be checking off every entry in Astro Royale right near the top of the list. The battles, I think, were like fine, certainly competently done. He does have a very unique art style that I think lent itself well to this sort of shonen style fight focus. But nothing, again, mind-blowing, nothing that really made me gasp, nothing that really moved me to any depth. I don't know, man. It is what it is. Like, I just am kind of shocked that they didn't go more wild with it, that it didn't seem to play to his strengths more. It felt like instead he was like, oh, okay, you want a battle shonen? I will give you a battle shonen. I will not really put any of my own personality, any of my own interests, my own fixations, my own charm into this battle shonen. Besides, again, the art was pretty unique and pretty cool for a Jump series, but just not really amounting to whole much. And the ending as well, extremely by the book. It certainly seems like he had kind of a larger scope of the series in mind. They were going around collecting shards of the magical Daybreak ore, this thing that infused everyone with powers. What was set up initially as kind of a tournament arc that would reward them with like one shard suddenly mutated rapidly, much like the enemy characters, into a giant final boss of the entire series. All of the good guys showed up. The bad guy they were fighting was revealed to be behind kind of everything. The source of like all evil in the series. All of the good guys team up and put their hopes into one big punch, and that's it. Again, nothing too crazy. Very by the book. Very much a scenario of, okay, I think they were told we need to wrap this up. It isn't doing as hot as we want. We're not really getting the Wakui Sensei X Factor that we were hoping for. Guess what? This is the final arc. Make it count for it all the marbles. I will say, though, in the final chapter, there was a few interesting things. It seemed like he did have a lot of lore cooked up for this series, and some of it was, like, a lot more interesting than the stuff we actually got. This idea of, like, oh, one of their family members was, like, an alien, and they were experimenting on her, and then in the injustice of that, he made a wish for the meteors to show up, which was the disaster that created the Astros, and it kind of felt like, you know, behind the scenes, he kind of had some ideas cooking, and then very unceremoniously just speed runs through all of them in this final chapter, and it's kind of like, whoa, hold on, that actually could have been interesting. I think maybe you should have played some of these cards a little earlier, and, you know, actually kind of attracted some general investment in the story. But whatever. I mean, we got to see them at least. I think as far as types of we're kind of getting axed endings go, I do kind of like the, well, here's all the other ideas we had style. I think that's better than just kind of like trying to make it clean, trying to wrap things up as if, yo, no, that was it. Just kidding. Like hiding the notes behind your back. No, that was it. Those other things I kind of hinted at, that was just a joke. It just kind of feels a little more dignified, and at least it makes the final chapter a little more interesting. And then after that, again, very generic, very by the book for Battle Shonen. Your journey continues ending, which we've seen many examples of. Perhaps the most common type of ending when something gets axed. To just say, okay, well, that's the rest. You don't get to see the rest of their adventure, but they're gonna go have it. That's it. Wave goodbye. And that's fine. Again, not that interesting, but fine. We'll give it a B plus. I think if I was to rate the series overall, it would probably be like a B. And that's not a bad rating. That's not a failing grade by any stretch. Don't worry, we'll get to the failing grades. It was just like not that interesting, but it was never bad either. There was nothing that felt like embarrassing, nothing that ever felt like baffling, like why are you doing this? It's more just like, why wasn't there more? Why wasn't there something crazy? Why wasn't there some sort of X factor? Why were all the characters kind of bland? Why were we expected to care about their interpersonal struggles when they haven't really done all that much? And, you know, there's worse things than being bland. So yeah, we'll say goodbye to it. It had a decent run, made it over a year. It'll be interesting to see what this mangaka does next. If he returns to something a little grittier, a little more seinen, that probably would be a good move. I don't really think the shonen space suits him very well. I'm curious to see if he keeps working for Shueisha in some capacity. I really doubt they're just going to run it back with another Jump series, but you never know. But he could land in some other magazine under their roster. And I'm very curious about what the legacy of the series is. As I said, Tokyo Revengers has a very fervent fan base. I think it's a type of show that it is like a lot of people's favorite. There is something kind of special about it, some sort of X factor. I don't know that much about it. I don't know what that X factor is, essentially. But there's something to it. And I wonder how those fans thought of Astro Royale. Were they seeing something I wasn't? If you're a fan, let me know. Like, I hope I'm not coming across as too dismissive or anything. Maybe there is some sort of, like, secret sauce in his character writing or in small details of fight scenes or something that other people were really resonating with or really picking up what he was laying down in a way that I wasn't. But to me, I think it's fine. You know, mangaka have long careers. You write and draw for your entire life. It's fine if a respected mangaka has a series that, if it's not even a flop, but it's just like not their best work. It's just a little middling. So yeah, it was a middling little series, but it was fine. Okay. Now let's talk about the new series that started soon after, taking its slot, is Nice Prison by Tatsuya Sugunuma, who before this had released mostly just kind of silly comedic one-shots via Twitter and stuff. There's a certain kind of art style and a certain sort of sense of humor that embodies this sort of like social media manga movement. I can't really pinpoint a spot where it started, but I feel like I've just kind of been seeing comics like this for years now, and it makes sense to me that Jump would want a comic like this in its roster, because it certainly seems popular, and it's probably popular with a very young demographic that Jump is trying to cultivate. And it's one of those things where it's like really tough when you're in traditional media and you've got circulation numbers in the hundreds of thousands, and then you find out that silly internet cartoonist who makes 4 koma manga with shitty art is pulling in like 10 million viewers. And it's like, well, what do you do with that number? What does 10 million really mean compared to your 600,000? But I couldn't tell you either. I'm in marketing, and yet I still have no idea what those numbers mean when compared to each other. Things that are viewed for free versus a product. I scared myself by talking about work on a Sunday. But I think it's not unreasonable for you to go, well, this certainly seems popular. Maybe we should put it in the magazine. So what was the result in this sort of medium mashup? I sometimes wonder if I'm like a little too forgiving of gag manga, if I like them maybe too much, and if my brain is just like too stupid. Because if you watch these videos, a very common routine is I'm like, you know, Chojo, Roboco, here's what they got up to last month. A stupid chapter about this, silly gag about that. This made me laugh, but I think it's pretty stupid. High B rating, low A rating, mid rate A rating, very high marks. And it's like, I'm kind of judging these on a different axis than other stuff, aren't I? You know, the Murakami, the Kappa Exorcist. What was that series actually called? I was about to call it Ultimate Exorcist Murakami, but that's not quite right. I really enjoyed that too. Another very silly gag comedy. And the only times that I was kind of like on it is when it's strayed outside of just stupid rapid fire joke type gag comedy. At any rate, we have here another stupid rapid fire joke type gag comedy. And I'm going to be honest, it didn't really do a whole lot for me. I didn't like the character design, the character design of the main character where he has like the little glasses, but they're handcuffs. Like, zoom in with your eyes. They're handcuffs. What? Like, he's a prisoner, I get it, but like, it's just kind of stupid. And the whole thing takes place within a prison. He's the super model prisoner that keeps all of the other prisoners in line and helps out the guards. Let's not even get into the politics of it, because it's like too stupid for any sort of like political assessment. But it's kind of like when you are using, you know, a pretty politically relevant idea of like prisons, and the idea of prison in Japan is very contentious, very controversial, very loaded. And I'm not like, oh, it should have taken this more seriously. But like, maybe just come up with a better premise in the first place. The whole thing kind of just like amounts to a joke of like, whoa, they're doing this in prison. What? But you're in prison, buddy. And the joke kind of got old like by the end of the first chapter, and it made me wonder like, what is the point of this premise? Like a lot of gag series in Jump, it kind of tries to blend a bit of comedy with a bit of like battle shonen stuff, battle shonen parody. You know, there's a whole hierarchy of rowdy prisoners. He stands atop the model prisoners, but then he has there's like a super bad prisoner that he's up against and battling his henchmen and stuff. And it's like, I don't think we're being asked to care about that at all. All we're being asked to do is like acknowledge that it's a parody. And I just gotta be honest, like none of the jokes in here really made me laugh. Maybe like a couple. It feels like very transparent insofar as there's like a certain kind of comedy that this style of comedy webcomic and stuff aspires to. It's like very goofy, it's very heavy on callbacks, it's very heavy on like pushing a joke a few stages further than you thought it would go. And this is all kind of like traditional gag manga stuff, but it's like so focused on this, and usually the format is so like isolating insofar as it's like a single 4 coma strip being uploaded on Twitter or whatever, or like a 3 page gag manga being uploaded on Pixiv. So it's not like there's much room to make these like the bones of a gag manga, but instead this is like a joke of like, what is a middle schooler doing here? Okay, and then for the rest of the chapter, the middle schooler pops up, and they're like, not you, and it's like, oh haha, he's in the wrong spot. And that's like kind of funny. But then in the second chapter, they did like the exact same joke. Instead of a middle schooler, it was an old lady. And the whole joke of the second chapter is, oh, they're having a jailbreak, but the jailbreak is like a festival. And it's just like that joke over and over again. And it's like, I don't know if this kind of comedy really works for, a series that's going to have like what, 17-ish pages per week. The first chapter at like 38 pages, I just read it on the cover, I didn't remember, is pretty excruciating, honestly, because like none of the jokes are really landing for me, and all they really do in terms of like comedy maneuvers is double down on jokes. That feeling of like persistence where you're laughing because the joke keeps appearing. Aside from that, the comedy is mostly just kind of like Tsukomiing silly situations, a lot of visual gags, a lot of just silly characters, a lot of silly things happening. And it's like saying this, it's so obviously just for like kids, it's just for like a 10-year-old. So me coming down from high and mighty and being like, well, if they were doing this on Curb, I think Larry David would have a much more wry observation of this scenario. But at the same time, I'm like, I am reading it. I am the person reading this and rating this for whatever reason. What am I supposed to do? Like, pretend I'm a kid? And moreover, I think Roboco and Chojo are still perfectly understandable for kids. They're still aimed at kids with their level of comedy and stuff. And those are like way funnier. And those feel like they have way more like thought put into them and way more variety in terms of comedy and stuff. So I don't know. The second chapter did end with a joke that I liked, where he's battling up against like this Elite Four. He takes out one of them directly in battle, and then there had been this running joke that he was indirectly attacking this person that was in like a porta potty, that the Elite Four guy was riding around on a porta potty, palanquin, blah 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 blah. But the reveal that it was another Elite Four member in the porta potty. And then it very unceremoniously just shows that, like, now 2 more of the Elite Four were taken out instead of just 1. I was like, okay, that's funny. And then at the end, they just had 4 coma. And the 4 coma, like, were not that funny. And they also had nothing to do with the rest of the chapter. But I was like, okay, I think you are actually a 4 coma writer, are you not? Maybe just do 4 coma, because they're fine. They're, like, functional 4 coma. So, we're going to give it a B-. I don't know if it'll last long. I think this was an experiment by Jump to see if this style of comedy manga will fit in alongside much more kind of traditional gag comedy, or like modern traditional gag comedy like Chojo and Roboco. But we'll see. We'll see if it takes. I wasn't super impressed. Okay. Let's talk about the other gag manga in Jump as point of comparison. Chojo was really nice this week. Again, let's talk about the variety of comedy. The first one was a very bizarre, silly chapter where Chojo is always being harassed by this lady who's like deeply in love with him. And she's so deeply in love with him that when Chojo uses his psychic powers to read her mind, he has these like insanely overpowering hallucinogenic visions. This time he just eats curry that she makes, and the feeling that she infused in the vegetables, that she saw the vegetables as her soldiers that she was sending to war to create delicious curry. Chojo imagined that he was on this trading camp with the rest of the vegetables preparing for battle. It's very silly, but it's like a whole new zone of comedy, all of these like military parody jokes, all of these like vegetable jokes, just seeing Chojo in that scenario and seeing how he acts, the way he like slowly gets intoxicated by it and wrapped up in it, and he starts to really think that he is a vegetable. And then just the fact that it all sprouted from such like a silly immediate idea of like, what if he ate curry and had this hallucination. Really fun stuff, yeah. And then in the next chapter, they go out drinking. It's a classic drinking comedy chapter, where even Nao-san, who's underage, hypnosis is used on her to make her feel like she's drunk so she doesn't feel like she's missing out. Lots of drunk jokes, whatever, nothing too substantial, just kind of running through how do each of these characters act when they're drunk. This is like the gag comedy fundamentals, man. This is how you write an actual chapter of gag comedy. Not just a couple pages, not just 4 coma, but an actual story that has funny jokes in it. And my favorite joke in that whole chapter is that Chojo is drunk and he's going, I need to drink this up. Last week I was an asparagus, I was being sent to war, I was putting my life on the line. And just that little crossover, very, very good, very good. Then a more heartfelt chapter, the Gyaru-looking girl who's always hanging out with them, that's like a secret gamer otaku, confessing that she doesn't really have any friends, that she's been trying to make friends, but she's so worried about her power level being exposed that they'll find out she's a huge nerd. And then, through Chojo's bizarre interference, her fledgling friendships are put to the test, but it turns out they think it's cool that she's good at fighting games, and that she's really into this stuff, and they bond over it. It was nice. It's funny enough, but it actually has some heart to it, and you actually kind of care about the characters. Again, it's like, I see no hint from Nice Prison that they are capable of doing something like this. Not yet, at least. And then in the latest chapter, the flustered cop, the easily flustered cop that always is calling things lewd, has to go on a date with Chojo as part of a staking operation, so they do a lot of shtick around how awkward they are together and how she misunderstands everything and assumes things are lewd. They get the bad guys, get a little action scene. And again, at the end, a little heart. A little like, oh, they actually like care about each other. Yeah. It's what you need. Just a little. Can keep it funny, but just a little. We'll give it a B+ for the month. Now we'll talk about the other one, Roboco. Roboco, outside of One Piece, which is cheating, and Hunter x Hunter, which is not really even in the magazine, Roboco is the longest running Jump series. This is the power of good gag manga. It can just keep going and going. And they're going to have a movie soon. There's a couple references to the movie coming in this month's chapters. I would love to see the movie. I don't think they're going to play it in Canada. We've been getting pretty spoiled. We've been getting a lot of pretty high hype anime movies. A couple things that are more niche too, that have been cropping up in our theaters. I feel very blessed. I'm not trying to knock things. I'm not trying to say things were ever better than this. But I still don't think it's enough that we're going to get the Roboco movie. But yeah, really good chapters this month. The first couple were a little mini arc where they're going camping. First, they have a camp food cook-off. Everybody proposing their best camp dishes. It was sort of in the vein of Yuru Camp, this idea that camping and food go hand in hand, and there's something kind of special about it. I love that. There's a great spot where they're doing smoking. They teach you how to make a rudimentary cardboard box smoker, which does actually work like really well. Like in terms of how close you get to a really good smoky flavor, you can get a lot of the way there with a cardboard box. But I'm also like, isn't this a little dangerous to be teaching kids? Roboco is always like showing you how to do stuff, and most of it is like age appropriate and fun. And then they were just like, make a smoker. Smoking is cool. And I'm like, bro, you can die from carbon monoxide poisoning so easily if you fuck this up. If you're like, ooh, sweet, I've got a cardboard box at home. I'm going to do this in my apartment. It's scary. That's so points deducted for that. Roboco, don't tell the kids to make smokers at home. But then, right at the end of the cook-off, a character appears to be murdered. And then we do a kind of traditional murder mystery thing, you know, investigating the suspects, investigating their alibis. One guy is just so like beyond the pale suspicious, that kind of comedy, but then in the end it was Roboco's fault, also very funny. Just good stuff. Another kind of traditional gorilla fighting with Motsuo chapter followed that. These are kind of their more like wordplay chapters, a lot of chapters around this kind of strange friendship they have, and moments where they refuse to be honest in their friendship. I like these because, you know, they're very silly still, and there's a lot of good like interpersonal comedy, and they try to touch on like social phenomenon, which I think is fun. It's kind of like getting kids into sitcoms in its own way. But in the end, it's like they actually usually do have like good messages too. Like it actually is kind of like, well, obviously these two are stupid for not speaking their minds and restoring their friendship. So all you good kids reading at home, maybe you should like be nicer too. And then the latest chapter, the chapter that came out today, was like truly bizarre. You know, there's kind of a running joke slash plot element that Roboco, before she became an order maid, but after she did a lot of other stuff, the timeline is very confusing and I think deliberately inconsistent. But there was a long period where she was a war mech, basically, enlisted by various guerrilla mercenary squads, and she was like the most potent weapon on Earth. And in this chapter, she goes to visit the grave of a fallen comrade and has like a series of flashbacks about their time together, how they used to be rivals and enemies, but then became comrades. And then she goes off to get revenge against her, and there's some action scenes, and it's like, what the fuck is happening? Like, why did you just suddenly decide to go back to this? Why did you play this card? Why is it all happening within one chapter? It gets very nicely, neatly wrapped up right at the end. Was there a point to any of this? Was there some sort of external significance? I don't know. Is it a parodying something else that's popular right now in Japan that I haven't heard about? Truly bizarre, truly unexpected, but that's also, you know, a beautiful thing about gag manga. Great Undead Unluck parody cover as well. Love that series. Love to see little tributes for that trickling in after it ends. Yeah, we'll give it an A for the month. Really good stuff. Gag comedy par excellence. Now let's talk about One Piece. As I say in every one of these videos, I've already talked about One Piece like for a total of probably 2 hours this month. You can go and watch those if you want more in-depth thoughts. But we are getting into the real meat of the Elbaf arc. What I thought was maybe just kind of a preliminary tension has escalated to the point where I think it may just be the major conflict of the arc. It's very multifaceted. There's lots of stuff going on at once. At the same time, even though some pretty heinous, evil shit is going down, a lot of other stuff with very emotional significance is going down, with like Hadrudin and Loki, and a kind of looming flashback with that. The tone is still very like adventurous, very chaotic, but kind of silly at times too. Like there's an enemy that manifests the children's nightmares as giant, shadowy monsters. Some of the kids are more afraid of their moms than anything, so there's these giant, shadowy giants. But then the giant warriors are terrified of their wives, so they're also afraid. Just kind of like silly things like this mixed in with genuine crises and genuine evil. A lot of like looming twists, a mixture of like twists that I've predicted and other things where I can just kind of sense a twist is in the air. I think our understanding of the history of Elbaf and the roles of some of these characters still has a long way to go, a long way to advance. There is still definitely a big flashback coming this arc that's probably going to last like an entire volume of itself. And in one of the more intriguing moments of the series, this month's the series, yeah, all 1147 chapters, no, of these month's chapters, we did get a little mini teaser flashback where the character Rox D Zebek appears, which is one of the most mysterious figures in One Piece yet, has been mentioned only a few times. But Oda is just so good at making such a structured story, making it so that characters always kind of live up to the expectations fans have of them based on like the role that they're in, based on like what we understand their history to be. And Zebek has been placed at like such a seat of power and significance that even though we have no idea what he looks like, we have no idea really what his personality is outside of very, very vague indications. We have no idea what role he could possibly have in the story, given that he's like long dead. Just seeing him, just seeing his shadowy silhouette in this flashback was enough to be like, whoa, keto, aura farming, holy, Goda does it again. Yeah. This is the joy of reading One Piece. This is the joy of reading One Piece for a long time, especially. So really good stuff this month. I'm loving this arc. It is continuing greatly apace. I wouldn't say this was the most significant month in terms of crazy shit happening or anything like that, but just really good, solid chapters. We'll give it an S. Alright, next let's talk about Kill Blue, which is approaching its 100th chapter. Last month, if you recall, I was like very disappointed in the progression of this series. I was very lost and confused by what the hell they were doing, which isn't the first time when reading this series. And I think basically this series kind of has like three modes. One is kind of wandering, lost, trying to establish what the hell this series is about and trying to come up with kind of like a coherent arc to have. Two is having that arc and it's kind of like sauceless and uninteresting. But then three is having that arc and it's actually not that bad. Four is having random one-off chapters actually, and those are sometimes pretty good too. So I'd say they certainly took a weird route to getting to this arc where Ogami is trying to become the student council president. It doesn't make very much sense. It's quite stupid, but they're doing it and it's been pretty enjoyable. I think it's a lot more interesting than their typical action scenes. I think it's a lot more interesting than kind of the Mitsukoshi battles or whatever they're called. Having him go up against friends instead of like kind of boring antagonistic characters is a lot more interesting. And I had a lot of fun with the chapters in this. Like the cooking battle was good. Ogami becoming the president of the home ec club was good. Just nice moments, fun moments, funny moments. This chapter where a divination craze sweeps across the school, and Ogami gets all worked up about it. Another kind of traditional pattern structure, his like immediate super fixation is always pretty fun. And then near the end, we really got a taste of the student council, which are kind of the antagonists of this arc, but again, it's not like they're out to kill anybody. It's a lot more interesting to me. And once again, it's like, this makes no sense at all. They kind of try to explain why the student council has not been doing anything despite all of the insane shit happening at their school. They also want to make the student council kind of like relevant and impactful. So they're like, oh, they know everything. They know somehow that assassins have infiltrated the school, and they know that the principal is secretly an evil man, and they're just not doing anything for reasons. And it's like, this is pretty damn flimsy. But again, if it gets the stuff that's fun, if it gets the stuff that's interesting, fine. You know, make all of your weird movements, all of your weird wanderings. Just make the substance of what all of this is for good. And it wasn't bad this month. We'll see what happens next. They introduced the student council president, who loses very anticlimactically and doesn't seem that interesting. Ogami senses no aura from him. But that could be interesting. I think they're going for a certain kind of character archetype that I've seen in other manga. This kind of like unassuming, easily humbled, but low-key, extremely capable in some area that we haven't really uncovered yet. They're going for something like that. They're going at it like very transparently. Definitely not the most like interesting example of that sort of character I've ever seen before. I'm reading Sket Dance right now. The student council president in Sket Dance is like a great example of this type of character, and I'm not really getting that vibe yet. But it could be good. It could be good. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. Uh, well, all I can say, it's at one of those like liminal points where they're kind of like trying to restructure the entire series again. This is maybe the 5th time this has happened. But this one I have a little more hopes for than others, just because it's not gonna be like more just endless assassin battles, and I don't know. It seems like it's gonna be sillier. It seems like it's gonna be more fun. So it'll get a B for the month. Okay, I think I know what's next. I'm not enjoying this series, man. It's like, I get it. It's not for me. It's a genre I don't care about. Light, novel, harem, whatever. With action and supernatural and exorcists. There's a million of them out there. Somebody likes them. It's not me. They're going too far, though, okay? Because here's how I think about it. You have Weekly Shonen Jump, the most illustrious shonen manga magazine in history. A hallowed hall of legendary series. Kinnikuman, Fist of the North Star, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Dragon Ball, One Piece. The hit parade is endless. I think for a kid, especially like a young lad, the titular shonen, there is no better manga education than reading series that have been like vetted by Jump, that were long runners in Jump. If you go through that, you're going to read some excellent battle series, some excellent sports series, excellent rom-coms, even compared... I've got my gripes with like Nisekoi, you know? It's got some stupid shit in it. It's got some very pointless fan service. True Love Rue ran in this, but like, those are tiers better. Those are many, many tiers better than this. It's like, this can lead you down a path of manga that opens so many doors so wide. That's what it did for me. When I read the Western localization of Jump, just called Shonen Jump, that came out monthly and had a couple chapters per issue of Naruto and Yu-Gi-Oh! And One Piece and Sandland. My mind was opened so rapidly, so widely. Reading Hikaru no Go just like totally transformed my understanding of what manga could be, what kind of feelings it could evoke in me. And reading the magazine now, week by week, Akane-banashi and Star of Beethoven are doing the same things. I think there's so much potential in this magazine. And I genuinely think the manga is superior to light novels. That manga is a more interesting medium that has a much richer history, a much wider diversity of genres and demographics, of moods, of expressions. There are countless masterpiece mangas that your mind should be open to. And it feels like in this grand road forward, through the pearly gates opened by Shonen Jump, there is one dark path that leads you to reading isekai harem, exorcism harem, light novels, watching trash anime, and it just leads you into this dark swamp, and that's called Nue's Exorcist, and they need to get it out of here. I'm such a hater. I'm becoming more of a hater every month, it feels like. And it was good for a little bit there. Remember, I gave it like a high C, maybe even a low B. I can't remember, but I was like, oh, they can write an actual battle shonen arc. They can do like battle shonen stuff if they really want to, if they really try. And then this month they did not. This is the most like light novel harem bullshit month yet. Uh, what can we say? It hit all the check boxes. Another girl shows up in Garuko's life for no reason. She's a spy from the enemy. She's been watching him for years and is obsessed with him and loves him, and tries to seduce him. And then first it's like femdom, but then it's like fem submissiveness. A lot of fan service. She's stripped in battle, and then they're like, Garuko, we have to kill her. She's a spy, and he's or no, it's like, oh, she's being like cursed. Yeah, they're not trying to kill her. The bad guy's like trying to kill her with like a curse because oh, she can't leak information, and then Garuku's like, I'm gonna sacrifice myself and take on the curse. And it's like, you met her 2 chapters ago, and she tried to kill you for most of that time. What the fuck are you doing? And it's like, there's nothing. There's nothing behind the writing. It's just because that's like the type of scene that you put in these sorts of harem light novels, because there's no like aspirational quality of the character. Garuko is not interesting, and he's not like heroic in interesting ways. There's no kind of like, oh, I want to be more like him, because he has no personality. So instead, and this is true of all these light novel protagonists, it's like, and when I say all light novel protagonists, I don't literally mean like all light novels. Like Araragi-san from Monogatari is not like this. I'm sure there's a lot of good light novels too, but I'm speaking of the trash, the giant heap of trash upon which the good light novels sit. The heap of trash that this belongs in as well. The protagonists are made to be so uninteresting so that you never feel challenged to try to emulate them. Like, if you were to emulate Deku from My Hero Academia, he cleans up that whole damn beach on his own in the first chapter. Are you gonna do that, slovenly reader? No. He constantly shows moments of strategic insight and intelligence, but then he gets flustered easily in other situations, and he's kind of like an otaku, but in a charming way, and he's genuinely friendly, and we can speak all day about his quality of character. They don't really want that in the light novel protagonist, because it's just meant to be for like maximum self-insertion. And so it's like, okay, well then what kind of dramatic moment can we have with a character that has no personality? Oh, well, he's gonna be super selfless and self-sacrificial. And that works because if you're reading it, you're going, oh yeah, I would do that too, bruh. I would totally sacrifice myself for her because she got hot. I mean, she had a poor treatment life, and I want to do good for her, so I will also sacrifice myself. And like, that's all you need to do to kind of like achieve a feeling of, oh, I'm just like him, is just imagine hypothetically that you would also be self-sacrificial, which doesn't take any work and doesn't feel like you need to change yourself at all, and will never be tested. So you can just be like, I'm just like Garuko because I would also be selfless in that moment. And that's why this series has like 18 of those moments. It happens with like every single character. There's a moment where he's like, I just met you, but I'm gonna let myself get killed. And then they were like already doing, oh, they're gonna get married, Garuko and this random new girl. This is gonna help us like infiltrate the bad guy's lair, if we lie about this. But then like the lie like doesn't work, so now they're saying, oh, she's pregnant, Garuko impregnated her. And then this leads for no reason into like bathhouse fan service, just so much fan service. And again, I have talked about this before, but there's kind of like aspirational fan service where it's like, through like shenanigans or through some trait of boldness or whatever, for better or worse, the fan service situation like manifests as a series of perhaps even crazy Rube Goldberg type machinations. And isekai harem type stuff often has this, but I've noticed more and more that there's like it's like that's too daunting to imagine. So instead there's more situations where it's like, Oh, it's just mixed bathing. So you just get to see them naked automatically. Like you don't have to do anything. You're just there because you're supposed to be there. And so let's just see all the boobies. Here's like 80 boobies. There you go. And it's like that's not fun for me. If I was like a horny person that reads manga predominantly for fan service, which I'm not anymore, but if and when I was, that wouldn't be that exciting because it feels like unearned. It doesn't feel like there was some sort of escalation to the fan service for which that's the climax. They just say, "Hey, go to the bath. There's a bunch of naked ladies there." And then it's like, "Oh, she has a sister, and the sister is also obsessed with Garuko. So you have to like prove your worthiness to the sister." And it kind of feels like they were ripping off Kill Blue, honestly, because they did the same sort of like gimmick of, oh, you have to like do trials to prove your worthiness as a man. So there's like cooking trial and stuff. Random fan service, of course, interjected in this, very unearned. The comedy did not hit for me at all because again, Garuko has the personality of like this or this. No, Tums have a lot more personality. He has the personality of everything I own has more personality. So there's like nothing funny. And then in the middle of that chapter, or rather, like in the climactic pages of that chapter, as if they were told while writing it, like, you gotta have more than this. Woof! We're suddenly confronting the big bad enemy who's gonna revive all the Hyo. That's Nue's former exorcism partner buddy. And they're having like a big climactic stare down with him, and it's like, what are they gonna fight? Like, is that what was the point of any of that? What was the point of any of that? Why? But then no, at the start of the latest chapter they just leave again, and they're like, well, I was just scouting. Scouting for what? You went, oh, he's doing what we knew he was doing, and then they like destroy his progress, and then he's like, I'm gonna start again, but it's gonna take longer. What? It was all for that? Like, there's just no like flow to it at all. There's just no feeling of like escalation or causality or like point. It's just shit happening, and then at the end, it's like implied that, oh, maybe like Nue herself is the one that Garuko is most in love with, and that's like the harem end route. But then his senpai character kind of like confesses to him, or looks like she's gonna confess to him. So it's like, oh, maybe it's that too. Just like really very much like, ah, shit, we got like 6 girl characters somehow. We ended up with a lot. Well, we gotta go through and have this sort of scene with all of them. Even though none of them really are interesting, we'll just keep doing it. And here's the thing that freaks me out. Like, as I said, there are people out there that read manga predominantly for like fan service. They just want to see boobies, okay? And that's fine. That's fine. But there's not that many boobies in Jump right now. We're going to talk about another series that has some boobies later, but like, this is the most fan service heavy series in Jump right now for sure. And so I'm genuinely worried. This sounds stupid. This sounds like, don't you have real problems? I have real problems too. I'm capable of having multiple problems on multiple tiers. This is a lower tier problem, but I am genuinely worried about it. That there's gonna be people that like are into Nue because it has the most boobs, and then they're like, I want to read more stuff like this, and they're like, great, here is 500 different identical light novel harems where you get to read about boobs, and a bunch of them have manga adaptations, and a bunch of them have anime. And then suddenly you are outside the light of God. You have strayed into genuine garbage, and you put down Jump, and you just read shitty light novel harems for the rest of your life. And you never get to uncover the rich history of Jump. It's decades and decades of wonderful series, the genres that it opens you up to, and then in turn the further developments of those genres and other demographics like josei and seinen, that exist in other magazines that have spanned millions of pages of quality manga of wonderful things. You won't even get to discover stuff like To Love Ru, which does boobs better. there's more fan service, and it's more fun, and it's more exciting. And sure, the protagonist of To Love Ru is a very bland dude, but at least he's something. At least he's something that you like want to be, instead of just somebody that has two modes of going boobs or I'm gonna get you, or wait, I will sacrifice myself. There's three. Yeah, sorry, I forgot one. Okay, so this gets a grade of E plus, which is the grade below D minus. It's the first time I've given this out. I hope it's the last time. I hope they get their shit together. I kind of doubt it. It might get even stupider, because now they're like really leaning into this idea of like, oh, he has to pick one of the girls that confess to him. And I don't think they've done a single correct thing in that entire kind of plotline development. I don't think they're going to start. But at least next month should kind of cool it on some of the more like degenerate fan service. And I really do mean like degenerate, like there's nothing fun about it. There's nothing silly about it. There's nothing funny about it. It's just like, well, here's boobs, I guess. Everybody's naked on this page, I guess. Alright. Moving on. Here's something I like a lot more. Let's talk about Witch Watch. What happened in Witch Watch chapter is very episodic this month. Just nice, solid sitcom stuff. I've been reading Sket Dance, as I mentioned, the previous series by this author. Or no, there's some in between, but the previous big series by this author. I'm really enjoying that too. Just really like the style of comedy, this very kind of sitcom-y stuff. We had a chapter about they accidentally bring a mascot character to life. He is a character that is meant to illustrate safety when crossing the roads, so he just gets hit by a car all the time. And they bring him to life by accident, and it's very silly because he just gets hit by cars over and over again. Then there's a very silly kids adventure with Nico in elementary school, where they accidentally put a very embarrassing message in the, what's this called? Omodomashi or something? The big confetti ball. So they're trying to figure out how to retrieve it before their teacher sees. Very silly, just kind of like a kid's adventure sort of thing. A classic spell gets out of hand chapter, the return of Ban, the dragon familiar. She's very fun. The spell that seems to be preventing Morihito from getting angry, which she takes advantage of. But then, of course, it was actually his anger was just getting charged up and she didn't notice. Fun. The latest chapter, chapter 200, for kind of a special 200 chapter celebration. They track down 34 of her spell butterflies, the things she needs to reclaim to restore her true age and her magical powers. Very funny scenario where they really did fake me out. I thought it was actually going to be maybe an action-packed chapter, a multi-chapter arc battling against this guy who inadvertently retrieved all of them. But no, he turns out to be a very silly joke character. All the spells turn out to be useless. It's a very nice subversion. And then in recovering those 34 spells, Nico instantly ages 3 years. She becomes 14. And her feelings for Morihito reawaken. So it's like, oh, we've kind of entered the next phase of this giant saga of bringing Nico back to her original age. I'm so happy that it's not over yet. It's been a lot of fun. I think they've really been enjoying every single like stage of it, introducing new characters and just kind of throwing age-appropriate types of comedy and stuff. Like I said earlier, they had the adventure in the elementary school classroom, which felt very much like the kind of silliness of kids that age. So now it's going to be like teenager comedy, which could be a lot of fun too. So yeah, I don't know. Really liking this series. Really like that it's taking its time. There seems to be no pressure whatsoever to wrap up the million kind of dangling plot lines they have, or to get to the end of this whole restoring Nico adventure, or to progress the love story that will obviously kind of bloom after all of that. And that's great. Just give me more. I'm loving it. And get an A+ again for this month. The Elusive Samurai was really weird this month. It's been weird before, and last month it was mostly about like his 3 wives and their sexual adventures, and it was very, very explicit in ways that I did not see coming at all. So that was weird enough, and if anything, this is like even weirder. Basically, the whole of Japan is thrown into such disarray, and our heroes, the elusive warriors, are kind of at a crossroads where they need to kind of understand ultimately who it is that they're going to support, who is ultimately going to align with whom, and where are they going to actually put their efforts. They decide that they're going to kind of not focus on taking out Takauji immediately, but instead kind of continue wiping out his forces through tactical skirmishes and stuff. And this leads to like a pretty weird scenario where I think, historically, empires always rise and fall. And although it would make for good manga to have Takauji at like the height of his powers and then be dealt this like fatal blow, this major campaign that just wipes out everything in one fell swoop, that's not how it really goes in history. There's like a long decline from the peak before they're actually like taken out in battle in most scenarios. So now we're seeing Takauji like losing allies, losing territory, losing forces. He's meant to be, the gigantic, shadowy big bad, but in the chapters this month, he comes across as very pathetic. He loses in a lot of scenarios. There's a great moment where they cosplay various Japanese legendary heroes to intimidate the enemy, which I'm sure was actually a real historic event, but it was conveyed very, very well. But it's like the good guys are like winning now on the grandest of scales. Takauji is being forced into a corner. And it just kind of creates like a very strange tone for the series where they don't really want you to mourn Takauji. It's not kind of like a solemn affair. We haven't really had our cathartic victory over him yet. They don't want to rob us of that future cathartic victory by making him so pathetic now. So instead, he just becomes this like abomination. Where in the latest chapter, he is rapidly trying to kill himself, but miraculously, all of his self-stabbings are missing all of his cells and emerging unharmed. He is too divine to be killed outside of like a fated encounter. It's just getting so wacky. There's still some like triple wife stuff. There was one pretty beautiful, very solemn moment where they're giving Fubuki a funeral and mourning him. But aside from that, the series has just been in such a tonally bizarre mode. Both just kind of the chaos of all these different allegiances, all these different characters popping back up, all these sorts of negotiations, and then just the strangeness of Takauji as a character now, where he's just this sort of inhuman aberration. All over the map. Very, very weird, but good stuff. I'm going to give it an A for the month. Very, very curious to see where it goes next. I think we must be approaching the end. I've always said this, the spoilers for the series are out there. They're on Wikipedia. But as it gets weirder and weirder, I start to wonder, not that it's going to deviate from history, but like, is just something else going to happen? Are they going to kill Takauji and then have a time skip to the modern era and talk about the modern manifestations of these characters, as they've kind of hinted at before? Is something totally crazy and psychedelic and supernatural going to happen? Are they actually going to deviate from history at some point? So many weird directions it can go in, and the weirder the series gets, the more I feel like one of those directions is actually going to come to pass. And I think it's doing pretty well, too. It also passed the 200 chapter mark this month. It's now the longest running of this guy's series. There was a nice little tribute to his previous series, Ass Class and Psychic something something in one of the cover pages. That was nice. So I feel like it could still go on for quite some time, even if they kind of run out of history to tell. So we'll see. We'll see. Okay. Next, let's talk about Kagurabachi. They're cooking, man. It's not like I've ever been like a skeptic of the series, I would say, but I feel like there's a level of fandom for it that's always been above me. But more and more, I'm kind of like, not like, oh, I get it now and I didn't get it before, but it's kind of like I think the it's got aura to me now. I think there's no other way to put it. Before I was enjoying it, and there was stuff I really respected about it, and there was stuff I found interesting, but it didn't have that like ultimate aura of coolness that I think for the biggest fans they really enjoyed. But now it's kind of like hitting. Frickin' Mr. Samurai, dude. That dude's got aura. The flashback of him and his daughter and his horrible life, and which led him to create this ultimate memory seal, completely forgetting about the existence of each other. That was really well done. That was really brutal. That genuinely got me like kind of pumped up on behalf of Mr. Samurai, while also throwing more kind of like ambiguity, throwing more strangeness into the lore of the series, into the history of this war that was fought with the Enchanted Blades. Then Samurai shows up in the present, and just shit gets crazy. I think the coolest battle of the series so far is unfolding. This crazy three-way fight between Samurai and Chihiro and Hirohiko, where all of them are manifesting all sorts of crazy powers from their enchanted blades. The powers of Hirohiko's sword, almost a devil fruit sword, launch you into like illusions and can twist the world around you both hallucinogenically and through like manipulation of objects at a distance, basically subjecting Samurai into like intense psychic torture where he has to like cut through his own memories. It's badass. And then you think that he gets ambushed from that and he gets killed. He ain't killed. He's also got the powers of a phoenix. In the latest chapter, that manifests. It's super badass. It looks super cool. Just this crazy scene where Hirohiko manages to scale his powers such that he can destroy the entire hotel. The imagery is just awesome. The scale and the action is awesome. It kind of reminds me of Sakamoto Days, just in terms of both having like huge kind of like set piece action going on while also giving a lot of attention to like the choreography of each little moment. Kino stuff. And then Samurai using the powers of the Phoenix to like restore the hotel too, and even more badass imagery. And just having that happen like back to back, I think I would normally think would be kind of lazy or like suboptimal writing or whatever. But just the rhythm of it was so intense, and just this feeling of like escalation and anything being possible. The aura is being farmed. I'm appreciating on it on another level now that I've tapped into this cool aura it has more and more. Also, this volume cover is so badass. In the end, it's just that I like Samurai. Samurai is such a cool character. Just the way they've conveyed this like blind swordsman archetype, the way they show his massive power and insane technique and crazy abilities that stands a tier above everything else we've seen in the series so far. They're doing such a great job with all that stuff. Love it. Killing it. Let me see more Samurai action. Giving it an A+. Alright, let's talk about Blue Box. Very, very crazy stuff in the previous months. Some kind of experimental chapters showing Chinatsu's victories in nationals, this progression, this weird blend of climax and anticlimax. That energy keeps rolling into the start of this month. I was about to say spoiler alert. That's this whole video. what do I mean spoiler alert? I'm summarizing and analyzing for people that either want to listen to this instead of reading for whatever reason, to feel out if they want to read, or to recap and empathize and kind of one-way chat with other people who are readers. I don't know if there's anybody that wants a spoiler warning. Anyways, Chinatsu ends up losing at Nationals at the Winter Cup. But I think, the sentiment is very clearly it was worth it. She achieved her dreams. She made it there. She has no regrets. And it's very poetically anticlimactic that it just sort of fades off screen. She just has this one little moment of bitter defeat. She doesn't wallow in it. She picks herself up. She keeps moving. She has a smile on her face. And then she says to Taiki, "You gotta make it to nationals, bud." Let me tell you, as a national level high school athlete, you gotta do it too. And that was very nice. After that, we had some really nice sentimental stuff with Taiki's parents. Chinatsu now obviously moving out of their house, and she doesn't have to practice basketball anymore, which of course is a very bittersweet feeling for everyone involved. They do a little Hatsumode chapter, going to the shrine on New Year's Day. Some kind of side couple development stuff. You know, the character of Kyo is still suffering so much. I really hope that he does have his day. At the same time, honestly, this side couple stuff is quite good, but it just doesn't interest me as much. And I feel like the story of Taiki and Shinatsu was so great because there was so little like drama. It just was like a very nice growing love between them. There wasn't really like forced drama or, you know, just kind of the hallmarks of lesser rom-coms. Whereas the side couple stuff, and it makes sense, it's not like knocking the writing, it kind of requires a bit more of these kind of like dramatic moments and misunderstandings and unspoken feelings and little painful moments, and it's good, but it's just not my favorite mode of the series. But then after that, as a perfect antidote, the chapter this week had them just going on a nice 1-year anniversary date. Very lovely. The chapter's title was even called Pure Happiness. But what I liked about it, you know, just beyond kind of the surface level of we're seeing two characters we really love, happy, enjoying each other's company, discovering how it feels to be a couple, to date. Really lovely stuff. But the message in it was very much like, okay, Taiki is anxious about her living on her own. He feels like he's being left behind. He's worried that they're not going to be able to have the relationship that they do now. And we're kind of like situated in his thoughts, but then it's revealed that Chinatsu also has her own anxieties, that she feels like there is going to be distance between them, and she's worried that they're going to grow apart. She's basically got the same kind of fears. And in this really beautiful moment, they kind of acknowledge each other's anxieties in a way that reciprocatively they're both like, I get what you're worried about, but trust me, it's going to be okay. And I really, really like that being depicted in a rom-com, because I think that's a part of all relationships, is cycles of anxiety that if things are good, you want them to stay good. You're worried about things changing. You're worried that things can't last. And you build up this anxiety, and then you talk it out, and you realize that your partner is feeling the same anxieties, that they also want reassurance, that they also want to voice their worries and be told, no, it's okay. I also don't want that happen. I also want things to continue. I also want us to remain together. And then you're stronger than you were before. Like, I think so often depictions of love in its final stage of, oh, they've finally gotten together, they're a couple now, shy away from things like that. Like, they either make it like a major problem that needs some sort of actual event to resolve. They need some like proof that things are going to be okay. When in actuality, these things just happen all the time, and you just kind of talk them out, and they're not that big deal, but they're just part of life, part of dating. I don't know. It's really nice. It's really nice. That's all I'm trying to say. Is really nice, and that this is in the same book, the same physical book as Nuei's Exorcist. What a world! What a crazy medium manga is. The same physical volume. You read this lovely depiction, the very emotionally mature depiction of a relationship, something that can really even guide you in how you should treat others and how you should care for someone that's so special to you. And then you flip physical pages, and now you're reading Nuei's Exorcist. It's crazy. All right. We'll give this an A+. Good stuff. Let me check my phone quick because I got a Discord message. Good morning. Recording jump video. Alright, let's talk about Akane-banashi. We are continuing this arc of Akane trying to learn the first story she needs of 3 to kind of advance to the next tier of Rakugo mastery. She sought out the vice chairman of the Rakugo Association, who is a master of this story, to teach her, but their styles are too clashing, and he's basically like, I don't think I could teach you, you are just so different than me. His precise timing of every single syllable, the way he meticulously plans out every performance, very, very different than Akane's freewheeling, freestyling, adapting to the audience feedback all the time mode. Great setup for an arc to kind of prove her worthiness. She wants to compete in his style. She's not content to just be like, yep, we're different. I'm going to be different than you forever, whatever, see ya. But instead, she tries to master that art as well. And in doing so, she signs up for this Futsume battle, in which 2 of our past characters, her previous rivals, have reappeared. That all was great too, you know, seeing how their arts have progressed. Hikaru, the voice actress, and Karashi, the kind of rebellious comedic expert. Both of those really, really good depictions. Karashi, especially in his stint in more broad stand-up comedy and his successes there, bringing Rakugo to the comedy world, really, really cool. I just really like how they establish his motivations, this kind of conflict he has with his mentor, where in a rare move, it's like the mentor realizes, oh, I kind of misunderstood what Karashi was doing. Like, that I think is very cool. So all that stuff is great. All that setup was great. I think we're just heading into like a very substantial competition arc. And then in the latest chapter, because I was kind of like, all right, this is neat. It's like a redo of the event she participated, where she had to do Jugamo, that she needed to win with that most kind of basic of story against these talented newcomers. And I was like, okay, this is kind of a similar thing, except that instead of being prescribed a story, she's being prescribed a style. Let's see if she can master it. And it's like kind of, it's genuinely interesting to me, because they're like, why would Akane want to learn how to be like Shomei anyways? Why does she want to learn how to tell a story so precisely on such a rigid timeline if she's so good at like the improvisational audience feedback style? And it's like, that's a darn good question. Like, it's not like one of those things where the answer is obvious, and it's kind of like you're waiting for the character to catch up or whatever. It's like not really clear that she knows why, or that there is a benefit to this. We just kind of know that she's really challenging herself to do it. So I was like, okay, this is all a good setup, but it felt like it was kind of lacking an X factor. It felt like at the end of it, it's like, okay, she's added that as another tool in her belt, and maybe she's learned a lesson about like being able to blend in the styles that others have mastered into her own art, and it's much more multifaceted and evolved now because she's not just kind of relying on one mode. And I was like, that's all right, but that it doesn't really kind of drastically do anything new. But then in the latest chapter, there was such an X factor, such a curveball that made me realize, oh no, this is gonna be radically different than any other performance she's given before, any other competition she's been in before. As her master, the arc rival, the major antagonist or deuterantagonist or whatever you want to call him, Master Arakawa tells her, you have to perform with no laughs. You have to win this contest and impress everyone, Not through your comedy, which you're so good at, but through something else. And this will require, of course, a total redevelopment of her style. She's starting from basically ground zero, trying to learn the non-comedic side of Rakugo. And to me, this was something that I always thought had to happen at some point. We've seen before that all of the great, great masters of Rakugo in this series are prized not just because they can get laughs, but because they can have these moments of heartbreak, of empathy, of these tragedies that they tell. Probably the still the highest watermark of the whole series, Makairo's promotion exam was all about that. That it's not just that he was doing a comedic story, but that at that point it bends to the tearjerker and how amazing he was at that. And it's like, okay, Akane needs to develop this skill at some point too. I was waiting this whole time. I didn't think it would come at you so straight on that she's just told straight up, do a routine that doesn't get laughs. I thought it would be a little more like nuanced, but I'm very, very excited for it all the same. So yeah, let's see what happens. I'm super, super pumped for the next month of chapters. I feel like it's gonna require some soul searching on Akane's part, and every time they kind of really dig into the roots of her character, I think that's very strong. I think as well, this is a great example or a great opportunity to flesh out the influence the France trip had on her. I feel like that's something that's just going to keep paying dividends, that she's going to be able to always kind of relate this back to experiences in France, and then we're going to see little snippets of flashback that kind of tell the more complete story of what she was doing there. It seems like she was mostly doing comedy there, so we'll see. We'll see. Where will the pathos come from? Where is the depth of tear-jerking heart in Akane? I think there's multiple ways this could go. It could be like about her dad. It could be about her master who's hospitalized, who may not make it. It could be depths of her emotions that we've never even really tapped into before. For a character that we know so well, that we know so intimately, that we love so well, I feel like there's still layers of Akane that haven't really been peeled back, and this is a great opportunity to kind of explore that. Great stuff. We'll give it an S- for the month. Let's look forward to more. The hits keep coming. Another series that I love, Sakamoto Days, which is in what seems to be kind of the opening salvos of probably the final major arc of the series. I don't know where they can go from here. They are definitely setting up an all good guys versus all bad guys classic showdown. This scenario where everyone in Japan has been given a gun with 3 bullets and full legal protection to kill any 3 people they like, I think is an amazing premise. Really kind of paying off this whole world building that in Sakamoto Days, Japan is like overrun with assassins, and there's like a whole assassin society lurking behind the scenes. This is kind of the final climax of this, where those two forces, kind of traditional, realistic, modern Japan, and this wacky world where assassins are secretly lurking around every corner, those like merge, those butt up against each other. And I think they're depicting it really well too. Just this kind of random PvP violence that erupts, all these little vignettes we get of people venting and shooting each other. It really feels like despair. Like it's this sort of like despairing, absurdist, tragic comedy. Watching like the movie Falling Down with Michael Douglas playing out millions of times simultaneously across Japan. And then we understand that there are multiple counter forces happening. It truly is all good guys versus all bad guys. The collective of students that we got to know back in the Assassination School arc are creating a counter force of their own, trying to hack the electronic controls of the guns to remotely shut down everyone's guns. Could be pretty cool, but I like though that they're not. There's no possibility of an everything was okay after all scenario. Like, even if they stop everything right now, there's already been so much bloodshed. There's already been so many innocent people killed. I kind of prefer that. I feel like that's kind of something special about this series. Is it's not afraid to throw in some actual like tragedy, some actual suffering. some actual violence. The good guys have their limitations too. So that whole thing, everything kind of got set up in the first chapter of that month. After that, fights. We find out that even though they presented the Order as a unified force under the command of X and the new JAA, that the Order is now all antagonists. Turns out Shishiba and Osaragi, who are kind of our buds in the Order, are defects. They actually were just waiting for the right moment to strike and betray, and then they fight against the rest of the New Order, and that's the whole rest of the month, and it's great. I think this series has just some of the best fight scenes that Jump has ever seen. This one isn't the most interesting in terms of there not being any crazy like set piece action. The prop usage is sort of limited. Sakamoto himself, who is kind of the most fun fighter to watch, wasn't there, but it's still so keynote. Just the choreography, the sense of power, the sense of speed, the very unique way that everybody fights, the really kind of like fast, dynamic action movie feel of it. So different than your kind of traditional battle shonen. I'll use this attack. I'll use another named attack. Nothing like that. Just super fast, flowing, impactful, engrossing action that escalates in multiple ways over these chapters. It's not just one fight, Kamihate, the sniper in the Order, who had his whole little arc quite a while ago and then hasn't really done anything since, shows up. His choreography is like inherently a little less interesting because of this whole silly gimmick where you only ever see the scope of his rifle. Again, they kind of lean into the silliness of it, which provides some nice comedic relief, even if it's not like the most interesting fighting. It's a nice balance, and again, it's like we got to bring everybody back. This is the big mega climax. And then just when you're like, hey, don't the good guys have too many people on their side, another bad guy shows up. This is another person from the orphanage that X came from. It's a black dude with lightning. You always gotta have a black dude with lightning. But his fighting style is really cool too. I love the dynamics where he's like squaring off against Shishiba and they seem like they're going toe to toe, and then he just drops like a nuke of actual like a bolt of lightning, and you're like, oh, wait a minute, he can do all that too. So it seems like his fighting style has some really interesting dynamics. Basically, now we're getting primed. Like, the forces are lining themselves up. All the good guys, all the bad guys. And what I'm hoping for is a nice blend of, like, big set-piece action chaos, where the battles are, like, fighting all in the same general physical area, interfering with each other. Major impact in one fight will affect all the other fights. They're really, really good at that stuff. But I'm also just looking forward to some, like, concentrated 1v1. They get multiple chapters, they get monologues, they get maybe a flashback. Let's send them out in style. Let's see this guy have his final fight of the series and give him all 5 chapters each, because they're going to be great fights. That's what I want for the end of the series. It seems like I'm probably going to get it. The series has not disappointed yet. Really good stuff. Give it an S- as well. Ruri Dragon this month only had 2 chapters, which is pretty typical. She has now manifested yet another aspect of her draconic powers, which is ice. Now she's making everybody freeze. It's pretty interesting. They dive a little bit into the lore again, and they talk about this idea of, like, well, in the end, this is like an unprecedented scenario, this half-human, half-dragon hybrid, and we've been kind of still raising you as a human because your powers hadn't manifested, but really, one option here is that you just go live as a dragon and you're just done with human society. And if you keep having these issues and stuff and it's bothering you and you don't enjoy being the center of attention and all of this, that is an option. And I think that's really interesting because, like, this whole series obviously is kind of allegorical and it's this supernatural draconic thing, but really it's not so different than, like, I don't know, puberty or any number of actual things that happen to people. But this kind of like breaks the allegory, this sort of like out, where she could at any time, and they really say, we would respect this decision and we totally get where you're coming from and you shouldn't feel bad about it, you shouldn't feel like it's giving up. Be like, all right, no, I'm done, I don't think I can live with humans, it's over, I'm gonna go be a dragon. That's like really, really interesting to me. At the same time, it's like they give us just enough of the lore, just enough of the explanation to move the plot forward like this, and to give Ruri these like choices and dilemmas and stuff. But they even lampshade this. They make jokes about the fact that, like, oh, there's so much obvious questions you should be asking, like, how many dragons are there? How long do they live? If I choose to live like a dragon, how will I, like, what does that mean? Where would I go? Where do they live? What do they look like? Who's my dad? Can I meet my dad? How did my mom and dad have a baby together? All these, like, very obvious questions, they seem to have no interest in answering. I don't know if we're ever going to see a dragon in the series. There's something almost poetic about it, you know, just this, like, this solid wall where they've painted, well, does it really even matter on it? Because, again, it's all about the interpersonal. It's all about Ruri as a person and her development. But it is, like, painful, man. They show that the kids get, like, a lecture on dragons. That the teacher's like, all right, it's time to fill you all in. But we don't actually see what he's saying. We just see in montage the kids, like, asking questions and the teacher going, oh, that's a good question. But we don't get to see a dragon. I just want to see a dragon. Like a full-blooded, real dragon-looking dragon. So many questions remain unanswered. Sometimes that feels frustrating, but that's life. We'll give it A for the month. Pretty good stuff. I really am so curious what's going to happen with this series. And I'll find out in like 2040 when it wraps up at this rate. Okay, next let's talk about Kiyoshi, which actually seems to be hanging in there. Every month I'm like, oh man, it's going to be the last month of Kiyoshi. I'm waiting for the super climax announcement. Because they've been in what this seems like the big climactic super final battle, all good guys versus all bad guys fight for a while now. But it seems like within this scope of, okay, this is your last arc, wrap it up after this, they are given some freedom to do everything that last arc should be, and I really appreciate that. And what that means is that all of the good guys that we've grown to love get to have big climactic battles, they get to say their piece. Just like I was saying for Sakamoto Days, I want them to have the space to do this. I want them to do this. Everybody gets big climactic one-on-one battles. They evolve, they grow, they complete their character arcs, and they beat the demon, and then we move on to the next one. But yeah, I think they're doing this in a way that not only feels very complete and very much, okay, that's what you should be doing, but also in a way that's, like, genuinely interesting. The way they are kind of bouncing around the city, tracking different fights. And of course, as I often praise, I really like when there is a sense of simultaneity of space and time, of it's not just like fights happening in a void somewhere, but like everything is all interconnected. Characters win one fight and then rush over to another in progress battle, stuff like that. Very, very well conveyed. In the second chapter of this month, they really give kind of the lay of the land of what are the major forces left on each side, such that it doesn't kind of feel like you're just reading all these fights in perpetuity, but there is like a structure to it. The sense I get is like, okay, we're almost done. Like, there's only these guys left, is what was being conveyed. With the number one Demon Lord appears. He's a great design. He's got really sick, nasty powers. It's all good, man. And then the latter half of the month had this guy here, Hitsugi, who has powers of water, going up against an ice demon, which seems like a natural enemy. He, of course, has a flashback, has some dramatic monologues, completes his character arc, comes into his own, and defeats an enemy more powerful than him. Boom, 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 boom. And I don't want to be like, yep, they checked the boxes, but they did all that stuff well. And they reminded you why those are the cliches. Those are the hallmarks of these final battles. And it's like, yeah, this was a good character. He had good fights. His relationship with our titular Kiyoshi was interesting, if not formulaic, but still interesting. And I think we're ending soon, though. There's not too many people that need to have their final battles like that. I love this series. I wish it could have gone on for a lot longer. I think there's a lot of ideas in it, a lot of imagination in it. Really great art, really great character designs, really great fight scenes, really great powers. There could have been a whole lot more, but it doesn't look like we're going to get it. So yeah, give it an A+. Join you next month for what could very well be the final month. Well, let's talk about Hima-ten. This is a series that I've been kind of up and down on. Sometimes I say, oh, it's getting the stupid disease. And then other times it manages to stave off the symptoms of stupid disease for a whole month, which we did here. There's a very nice chapter where they go to the fireworks show. And this felt like... Am I Swedish? I'm gonna get some water. This really felt like it could have been building up to a confession moment. And part of me is like, if I was reading the series after the fact, and it runs for like 200 chapters, I would go, oh, obviously that's not going to happen. And there's like a rhythm to these sorts of rom-coms where you know that like the real decisive progress moments, like confessions and stuff, are still minimum so many chapters away because they just want to keep going and in perpetuity. But I don't know how well this series is doing. I don't know if it's succeeding. And, you know, for all of the big, long-running rom-coms I've read, there are dozens of short-running long rom-coms that I haven't even heard of, where the confession does have to happen in the first 50 chapters in the first year of serialization, because they don't have time to stretch it out any longer. So reading it week by week, it was kind of interesting to have that dynamic where I was like, oh, maybe they are actually going to go for it. They didn't. And then I was like, whoa, wait a minute. Did he actually fall in love with Hima instead? And he's going to go confess to Hima-chan? No, he didn't. But there was some really cute moments, and I was kind of caught up in the moment because I thought something like this might happen. And then there was a fun chapter where Hima-chan gets a kitten. Very, very cute. Really bonding moments between our MC and Hima. Hima really understands the scope of her feelings for him now, and it's like, oh, that's pretty good progress. In my mind, I'm kind of like, it feels like there's a lot of focus on Hima-chan right now. So I think probably... if they're estimating, okay, the series is doing pretty well, but not amazing. It's not like To Love Ru. It's not like Nisekoi. We're going to probably get like another year out of it. At most. I think they're going to have big substantial arc with Hima-ten. Our like main girl, our titular girl. Then major arc with Kano, our titular girl. And then... basically, at the climax of each of those arcs, they confess, but he's like, no, I like somebody else. And then finally we have the final actual confession, good end arc. I think that's probably how it'll go down. But in the latest chapter, they kind of threw a curveball at me. They introduced a new character. She's a huge secret mega fan of Hina. There's various misunderstandings. It was pretty fun, pretty silly, but like with some kind of nice twists and turns. And I like this new girl. I liked her character. I liked her design. I think she'll have a fun role in the story. So now I'm just kind of like, I don't know. Maybe I have the scope of this all wrong. Maybe they actually are planning on getting into that real perpetual stage in rom-coms where they just have such an assortment of characters that they can just run forever. I don't know. I don't know. We'll see. But I do think the series is like pretty solid in the fundies. Like the characters are good. They know how to do a cute moment. The art is really good. So if there was one that was just gonna run to the point of annoyance and exhaustion, there are worse choices. We'll give it a B plus for the month. Pretty good stuff. Next, let's talk about Ichi the Witch, which spent which spent this whole month in the midst of its first like super substantial arc, trying to exercise. No, that's not quite what they're doing. They're capturing the magic that eats away at people's despair. The Dream Eater Baku. There's a real like feeling of both this arc kind of wanting to set up multiple parallel plot lines and potential misunderstandings and kind of like a fairly major scope where there's going to be several climaxes. But then at the start of this month, it kind of felt like they changed gears, and I don't know if maybe this was like an editorial decision, or if this was always the intent and I was just kind of getting the wrong read or what. But suddenly it was like, oh, okay, no, all of our major characters are now in communication, and there is no misunderstanding, and they all have the same ideas. They're all on the same path, and they all have the same goal. And now it's just like execution, which is a nice cathartic moment in shonen in these kind of bigger arcs. But it just happened a lot sooner than I thought, which isn't all bad. It does kind of convey like a very nice brisk pace. There's nothing belabored about it, and we're moving on to the next kind of bunch of action, which is great. Great action with our on the cover girl here, Des. I love her character so much. She's so much fun, and you forget because she becomes kind of like a Tsukomi character, and then also just sort of a silly character, and you forget that she's like actually really strong and has really cool powers. That she uses to fight against this enemy magic. And then we find out that like the magic is way more evil. At first it was like, oh, it's absorbing the emotion of sadness, which seems like it should be good, but actually it's like you live a empty life because you can only experience happiness. Like, all right, that's interesting. And it's like, no, it was saving everyone's sadness to hit everyone with a giant despair bomb and drive the whole kingdom into killing themselves. And it's like, oh, it's a little less interesting, but I guess it is a little more action-y. And then it's like, yeah, to capture me, a single person has to experience all of the suffering that I have gathered from the townsfolk over decades or whatever. I don't know if it's been decades. I think it's been a couple of years. And it's like, again, all right, it's not as interesting as kind of the more philosophically nuanced original perspective that we had on this arc, but it is very action-packed. It's very much like good versus bad. We're gonna fight, and we fight. Gokuraku shows up, their kind of new comrade in this arc, punches the magic, which is sick. Ichi shows up again too, even though he was trying to like divert the audience so that they could sneak in. It's like, oh, I diverted them enough, so now I'm back. And again, it just kind of feels like they are at once sort of starting down the path of a more ambitious structure with more parallel plot lines and like more stuff going on, more characters. And then they're like, no, like, let's bring everybody back together. Just one antagonist again, just one thing to do. So it's like fine. It's good, but it's not like great. It's nothing that I'm like, oh, this is a pinnacle of arc writing in shonen. I think it's just like good enough, just solid. And then Gokuraku is attacked by the summation of all the despair, which is of course the challenge. So it's like if he can survive this, then they can capture the magic. But the depth of that despair drives him in to a rage of grief, and he's starts attacking everybody. So now it's like Ichi has to fight him, even though they had just become buds. Kind of tragic. It's like, all right, there we go. There's your arc. A lot simpler than I expected, but still some very interesting components. And it's like, I'm like, I guess in the end it's just going to be a fight scene. That's not the worst thing. This series does do really good fight scenes, so I'm looking forward to that. And it's probably going to be like Ichi versus Gokuraku, and then Des versus the magic itself. And that's great. That's fine. Those will be good fights. Okay, we'll give it an A for the month. Next, let's talk about Shinobi Undercover. I don't know, man. Series, it's starting to feel a little like Kill Blue, where they just kind of keep moving between ideas that all just sort of work okay. But then even when they happen upon a structure that I think suits it better than anything else they've done, they also kind of wander away from it. Like, they just can't commit even to when something's working. So the whole infiltration battle thing is over, and then it feels like, oh, we're gonna do like training arc where he's gonna go visit her building, which is like a ninja training, or not a ninja training facility. It's like a building that ninja are guarding all the time. He's gonna work with their security force to prevent intruders. And it kind of is set up like, oh, this will be kind of like the next phase of the series, is him doing this by night and being friends with her by day, and it's all awkward because he's doing the security detail in the building in which he lives, blah blah blah. But no, they kind of abandon all of that after like one chapter. It's pretty generic to the actual like training stuff, already over. And then they have like a all bad guys assemble scene where the crew of evil renegade ninjas that have teamed up to try to abduct Aoi are all hanging out, and of course they all have personalities. And it's like, it's not bad, but nothing, again, all that interesting. Just kind of like, yep, that looks like an evil crew. I can't wait for each of them to have a small arc and get defeated one by one. And then in the latest chapter, they go to the beach. There's a little swimsuit fan service, whatever. There's this kind of growing theme of our MC trying to understand his feelings for Aoi. That's kind of tedious, not really that interesting, but has provided like a few cute moments. That feels like it's getting kind of pushed to a head here, where he starts to feel jealous of a relationship she had with a ninja that was guarding her in middle school, who, based on rank, seems like he's even stronger than our main character. And it's like, oh, okay, that's all very by the book too. Feelings of jealousy and whatever. But it's like, man, every once in a while, this is also something that happens with Kill Blue. They kind of overplay their hand on the premise, where, in Kill Blue, they focus a little too much on this idea that he's actually a de-aged, middle-aged hitman that's living as a middle schooler because of magic. Here, they sometimes dwell a little too long on the idea that her entire life has been fake. All of her friends, everyone she knows, is actually just like an undercover ninja that's trying to protect her, and she knows nothing of all of it. It really is like so weird, and they don't seem to want to justify it any more than they already have with this like very flimsy premise. They're not at all interested in like explaining why she requires all of this guarding, why she's being targeted so much. I guess that's going to be a shocking revelation later. We learned that they were protecting her mom as well. It's unclear if her mom was aware of that. It's unclear if they're going to tell her at some point. But it is just so weird, and I always feel like a little bit alienated from the series just because of how bizarre this premise is. And it feels like that is also kind of butting its head with where everything else that's happening. So we'll give it a B- for the month. Now let's talk about Sid Craft. This is a series I was actually enjoying quite a bit. I liked the author's previous work, the rom-com We Can't Study. And I was like, yeah, this is off to a pretty strong start. The blend of kind of harem, silly rom-com stuff with a bit of fan service, misunderstandings and secret disguises, and all of that stuff really nicely blending the genres of mystery and rom-com. And then they would focus on the mystery sometimes, and it would actually kind of take itself seriously for a bit. And I thought it was doing like an okay job with that too. Some good action scenes and stuff. But here I feel like they've jumped the shark. In this month, I've really felt like, ooh, it's not doing as well as they thought it would. They're considering swinging the axe, and they were told, hey, get some fans or else this is it. Because there was two very desperate acts in this month that the series had no real indications of being that desperate before. First, they introduce another lady who is in love with Sid Kraft, who joins the kind of harem. She has the biggest boobs yet, even bigger than Mistcat here on the cover. And they didn't really bother with like a secret identity with her. There's no kind of second layer of intrigue or whatever. She's just his childhood friend, very conveniently. She lives beneath him, very conveniently. She's a wacky mad scientist, very conveniently. She makes all of these wacky gadgets that make for fan service, very conveniently. And I was just like, man, they didn't try very hard on this. This really feels like throwing in Poochie. They needed a character that might generate some interest. Let's give her the biggestest boobs yet. What's her personality? Oh, she's lazy. It's like, eh. And so she gets introduced, then she's brought back in the next chapter. She's like, I've made a lie detector. So everybody talk about your love lives, and it's kind of wacky misunderstandings. And again, it just kind of feels lazy. Like, maybe they thought, okay, in a move of desperation, we have to make it clear that there could be actual romantic development, that Sid Kraft could return the feelings of one of these women and progress from this stage of kind of like harem chaos. So let's come up with a very convenient way to kind of hint at those things actually maybe happening in the future. A lie detector. And it's like, isn't this meant to be set in like Victorian England? And they make jokes about like, what is this crazy sci-fi anachronism? And it's like, okay, that's kind of funny, but like you could also just not do it. You could also just like come up with something else. And then it's like, ooh, I don't think either of those things really worked. It still kind of feels like they're feeling the pressure. And so they play another card from their hand, which is that, you know, there's been all these hints of the mysterious Zero Craft, the major antagonist behind all the nefarious goings on. He's been getting serial killers to kill. He tried to blow up the boat in the boat arc. It's like, oh, and now he has kidnapped a bunch of kids from an orphanage. They have to come up with a scheme to defeat him. And again, it's like just so lazy, like so devoid of real motivation or real ideas. Like, why is this happening now? There's no real build up to it. There's no real intrigue around it. It was just like, it's happening. Guess what? The big bad guy's here. They do this like fake death scheme because he's demanding that Sid Kraft kill the inspector. But like they could have done so much more with that. Like they could have made it some crazy misunderstanding and some real conflict, some moment of genuine self-sacrifice. Maybe something where Sid Kraft really does believe she's dead, and then there's this big cathartic moment later. But no, he's basically just like, "Can you pretend to be dead?" And she's like, "Yes," and that's it. And then like the bad guys like fall for it. And it's just so lazy. Like, didn't you want to write a mystery series? The mysteries at the start had a lot more substance to them. They felt like they actually had like twists and stuff. So it's like, yeah, the fake death plot worked. And then they track down the big bad guy, but he's not Zero Craft. He's X Craft, the right hand man of the big bad guy, which to me feels like they're like, wait, is this good? Is this good? Can we go for a little longer? Can we have another 20 chapters? Okay, whew, okay, all right. I think that staved it off. Okay, so this guy is actually the henchman of the bad guy. We still got the bad guy. Don't worry. We'll pull that out when we need another 20 chapters. But yeah, like really not that interesting. A little action sequence, but again, no real like twists and turns to it. Just kind of, will he make it out of the burning building? Oh, she saves him. Okay. And then again, they're like, oh, and there's romantic progression too. That Miss Cat declares her love. I'm gonna steal your heart away, detective. and you're like, okay, that's kind of progress, but it's really kind of just like fake progress. Like, even though it is progress, it's basically just trying to signal, hey, something changed, so we can kind of keep doing it as it is now, right? Because something changed. I don't know. So yeah, I really felt like big downhill movement this month. We'll give it a C plus. Still moments I like, art style I still like, the general premise I still like, the characters I still like. But man, it started feeling like it was getting desperate, and all of the desperate moves they made just not interesting. Like if you're gonna feel like your back's against the wall, start swinging, start doing something actually like cool and inventive and interesting, and not just like, I don't know, here's a scientist chick with huge tits. Do you like that? All right. Let's talk about Embers. We had the climax of their first big match, the first big kind of meat of the series, with this sort of very straightforward sports shonen. It's all about what happens during the sport itself. And that was actually quite well conveyed. I thought it was a little weird, this idea of like, he misunderstands what role he's supposed to have on the team, and he like learns a bunch of bad ideas. And the first half of the match they're losing because he's not like doing the right thing. And I kind of get it, because they've set him up to be like such a force of nature, so like insanely superlatively strong, that really it should be like a non-event. They should just kind of win easily, and he should do what he's supposed to, and it should work. So they had to have some reason for it not to go so smoothly. But it really doesn't make sense to me, because did they not practice? Did they not see him doing this stuff during practice and be like, no, that's not what we want you to do? But whatever, he figures it out. And there's some very good climactic moments, some good sports action. In the end, I think it was a very well executed game of soccer. I think if they can just kind of keep a bare minimum of making them interesting in terms of interpersonal conflict and setting up characters, and then just spending 80 to 90 to 95% of the runtime in soccer games showing soccer action, and it can be as good as this, then great. That's all I want. That's all it needs to be. A couple more twists. We find out that the teacher that got him into soccer is actually the coach of the rival team and the grandfather of their manager. Kind of fun. I like that as a little twist. It kind of explains why she has such a passion and such a strategic mind about soccer. And now it also becomes like a kind of climactic showdown for her as well, like going up against the mind of her grandfather. Very cool. But generally speaking, the stuff outside of soccer still just feels a little weaker. Like the character writing is fine, but it's not really that interesting. Nothing really that new. Then we had another sports series classic where we got to see the rival team just like curb stomp people in action. We find out that the star player of this rival team was challenged by Grandpa Coach to score a goal with his right foot, left foot, and a header. That's kind of fun. It's kind of cute. Again, just showing his arrogance, showing his supreme power. There's one depiction thing that I found pretty interesting. All the actual sports action depiction in the series has been very, very by the book, but well done. Good conveyance of speed and weight and power. This was the first time they showed kind of like a little gimmick, something fresh, which I actually really liked, where the manager coach girl is watching and videotaping the match that the rival team is playing. And then there's like a moment where she's like blown away by a maneuver the main rival dude does, where he just like completely reads and outsmarts the field. And it shows what she's watching with the timestamps, and then it shows her like rewinding it and watching it again, but like different things are highlighted. And I was like, that's really cool, because we're seeing through her eyes like how she's analyzing it, how she's like making sense of it. But it's also just like a really cool conveyance. Like it just felt really engrossing, and this kind of feeling of like, ooh, like the secret behind what you just saw, even though you just saw the play happen, you had to rewind it and watch it again to really understand it. It's like, oh, that's kind of cool. Not that I think it'll be like a recurring thing, but I hope it is a recurring thing that they try to depict things with those different modes, that they come up with different ways of conveying what the characters are actually saying. So yeah, pretty good stuff. At first I was kind of like, oh, this is quite bland, and the pacing was really weird, and it didn't feel like they really had much to say besides what if a delinquent played soccer. But they're starting to kind of show their stuff. I think they're starting to do the parts that they're good at more and more. I'll give it a B+. We'll see where it goes. What I want is like a more substantial soccer arc. Like, I'm sure this battle against their rival school, I want it to be like 5 or 6 chapters minimum. Really break down the dynamics of the match. Really get into the tactics of it. Have different characters take the spotlight in turn. You know, classic sports shonen stuff. I want to see it get into that mode because I think that's where it's going to be strongest. Okay, let's finish this off by talking about Star of Beethoven. I don't think it's long for this world. It is consistently showing up near the bottom of the table of contents. Unfortunate. Probably looking at like a 20 chapter club entry here. But I love it. And I'll enjoy it right up until the end. I think it's working on so many different levels. Some of them I think totally unnecessary. But all of them very interesting, very unique, very well conveyed. Just the whole style of it is so fresh, so unlike anything, not only that I've seen in Jump, but just anything I've read in manga in general. It feels like it's breaking some new ground. And the tone of it is so strange. Like, I wouldn't say inconsistent. There is kind of like a through line to all of it that makes it all feel very like connected and coherent together, but so varied, like different movements within a piano sonata. How irrelevant. So in this month we had a chapter that was focused mostly on Yasuo's reputation in school, all these people that bear various grudges to him. We find out that the student council president actually has a very personal connection, where the guy that reinvigorated Yasuo's love for piano was in fact her grandfather. She always resented him for being kind of this favorite student of his. We find out that Yasuo still has this kind of blocker on his play, that he's playing well, but not as well as he could, trying to investigate that. It's this kind of sense of interpersonal, introspective intrigue, tapping into these subjects of like, how do you truly convey your sincere self in art, and how do you change yourself to evolve your art. And then it becomes gravely serious, talking about an incident in the real Beethoven's life, where he adopted a child to teach him music. I think it was a nephew. But his constant overbearing demands and his ridiculously high expectations for the kid led him to attempt suicide. This is brought up as kind of like lingering poetic flashbacks interspersed with Beethoven now trying to teach Yasuo how to unlock his true potential. Beethoven's character remains so enigmatic, yet such a force, such a singular force, that it leads to a conflict between Yasuo and Beethoven. That Yasuo really is hitting like a nadir of total perplexity of himself, of what Beethoven is, of how to play. Beethoven himself is having this arc where he wants to write new music, but he feels like so confused as to why he's there, what happened to him, how was he resurrected, and all these unresolved feelings from his life before, like his lost love and this poor kid. And so those two things are kind of happening in parallel. And then there's this whole thing of like, there's like secret agents, maybe FBI, maybe mercenary, whatever, who are tracking down a ring that has the magical power to resurrect people, which is evidently what brought Beethoven back. And they're on his trail in Japan. and going around like beating up people and interrogating people and trying to track them down. And it's just like, what? Like, what is any of this? What is any of this? What are the parts that are made to kind of like compromise such that it might get a readership? What are the parts that are like the sincerest, most innermost, weirdest desires of the mangaka? What is the thesis here? Where are these characters going? What are we supposed to think of Beethoven as a character? What is we supposed to think of Yasuo as a character? It's so enigmatic. I really, really love it. I have no idea where it's going. It does feel like they understand the urgency of getting there fast. Like, shit is happening in every single chapter. And it may be that, it's all kind of building towards this music festival that Yasuo is going to participate in. Will he be able to have this artistic breakthrough in time and revitalize his play and, become the musician he ought to be? That might be the climax of the whole series. We might get the resolution to this whole FBI investigation into Resurrection at the same time. Like I said, there's not likely much time left for this series. It doesn't seem like it's going to pull the audience it deserves. But we'll see, man. We'll see. We're going to give it an A+. I'm really, really loving it. It's just so unlike anything else. I truly hope, even if it doesn't get off the launch pad, even if it becomes this weird 1-arc, 2-volume series, that the author grows a fan base and is recognized for putting something so weird and so powerful into Jump, and has a long-running hit series at some other magazine after. Okay, that's everything. This was last month's tier list. This is this month's. Things moved around a little bit. We have the first appearance of the E tier. A lot of things kind of falling off a little bit, but our strong series are remaining strong. I will see you at the end of May. With this, by the way, we are a whole year into doing this. A whole year of monthly videos. The first one was April 2024. This is now April 2025. I want to do something more to celebrate. I don't know what exactly, like maybe like a retrospective, maybe doing some stats on how the series have been performing. At the same time, I also kind of like doing some of that stuff at the end of the year to look at 2025 as a whole. So I don't know if anybody watching has ideas of stuff they'd like to see as like a retrospective of the first year, then let me know. I'm definitely open to it. The other issue is I just really have very little free time right now. I'm just very busy with stuff. I'm really, really grateful that my Sunday worked out, that I was able to make this video now. Honestly, I had lunch plans, but they got canceled at the last minute. And I was like, sweet, it's time to talk about manga. But I don't know when I'll have a chance to make like another video about these videos. But we'll see. All right, good stuff. Love me some manga. Hate me some harem light novels disguised as manga. See you next time.